You put your signature on the prenuptial agreement, Elena. You walk away with exactly what you brought into this marriage, which amounts to absolutely nothing. Damien Cross's laughter echoed through the Chicago courthouse corridor, reverberating against the walls. His arm wrapped possessively around Vanessa Moore, his former assistant turned lover, and her fingers resting protectively over her pregnant stomach. In that moment, he believed victory was his. He was convinced the trembling woman before him was totally defeated, shattered, and prepared to vanish into the thin air. Yet Damien failed to examine the building's visitor log that particular morning. He remained unaware to the 3 midnight black Cadillac Escalades that rolled up to the courthouse entrance, their engines rumbling like warning. He completely missed the 5 luxury-dressed men stepping out from those vehicles. Moving with the calculated precision of trained soldiers, Damien Cross was about to learn that silence isn't weakness. It's just the calm before the storm. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. But before we continue, let us know where in the world you are watching from. Comment below. We'd love to know how far these stories travel. And it's only people who supports Damien Cross and injustice will not like and subscribe. So, if you are Team Elena, if stories about justice, revenge, and people who refuse to stay quiet matter to you and also you want it to get to others as well, then do well to subscribe. Now let's get into it. On that particular Tuesday evening, 72 hours earlier, Elena Vitali positioned herself beside the ceiling-high windows of the penthouse suite on Apex Tower's 52nd floor, observing everything playing out. Behind her, the sharp metallic sound of a zipper being shut cut through the silence of the apartment. "Are you even listening to me?" Damien's cold voice followed. It was the same tone he had used for 3 years. The same one that slowly crumbled her confidence, piece by piece. Elena turned around. Damien Cross stood by the door, a leather travel bag resting near his polished shoes. It wasn't his bag. It was hers. The same old suitcase she had brought with her when she moved into this glass tower 3 years ago, back when she still believed in love, second chances, and being valued for who she was, not where she came from. "I heard everything, Damien," Elena said quietly. "That's it?" Damien scoffed, glancing at his Patek Philippe watch, one she knew cost more than most people made in a year. "Vanessa arrives tomorrow morning. I won't have her walking into a place cluttered with your things. It's bad energy for our child." The name hit Elena like ice right at her chest. Vanessa wasn't just another woman. She was Damien's assistant. The same woman Elena cooked for during late work nights. The same woman Elena once thanked for managing Damien's schedule, so he could make it home for their anniversary. The anniversary he spent texting Vanessa under the table while Elena smiled and poured wine. "She's pregnant," Elena said. It wasn't a question. She had heard the whispers weeks ago, from the doorman, from the cleaners who looked at her with quiet pity. 16 weeks, Damien replied casually, adjusting his tie. "A boy, an heir, something you couldn't give me." That was the deepest cut, and he knew it. He knew about the miscarriage, the doctor visits, the nights she cried alone in the guest bathroom because he was always too busy. He knew how much family meant to her, and he used it without considering how that would make her feel. "We're both on the lease," Elena said, trying to make him see reasons with her. "My name is on the registry." Damien laughed at her. Then he grabbed a thick envelope from the glass table and tossed it at her. It hit her chest and fell to the floor instantly. "Divorce papers," he said smugly. "And a copy of the prenup you signed. Article 6, Clause 3. If the higher-earning partner files due to incompatibility, the dependent partner walks away with nothing." Elena stared at the papers by her feet. The words blurred together. Legal language designed to strip her of everything. "I never cheated on you," she said softly. "It doesn't matter." Damien stepped closer, looming over her. "I have the best lawyers money can buy. Richard Stone, $1,200 an hour. That's more than you make in a month at that sad little bookstore. Fight me, and I'll bury you in legal fees. Or you can sign, take your things, and disappear." He kicked the suitcase toward her. Elena looked at the man she married. She remembered meeting him at a charity gala. Charming, brilliant, an architect who said he admired her genuinely. But it now dawned on her that it had all been an act. He married her because she was quiet, safe, someone he thought would never challenge him. "You're making a mistake, Damien," Elena said, her voice low. "The only mistake I made was thinking you belonged in my world," he replied coldly. "You're boring, Elena. No connections, no ambition, no polish. Vanessa fits the image. You were just a placeholder who stayed too long." The private elevator chimed. 2 security guards stepped out. Jerry and Damien. "Escort Mrs. Cross out," Damien said, pouring himself a drink. "Cancel her access into this house or anything that has to do with me." "Sir, it's raining outside," Jerry muttered. "Not my problem. Do your job." Elena raised a hand. "It's fine, Jerry. I can go." She picked up the envelope and the suitcase. She left her clothes behind. The jewelry, the tablet, the credit cards with her name stamped in gold. She took only what she came with. At the elevator, she paused and looked back. Damien stood by the window, sipping his drink and admiring his reflection in the rain-streaked glass like a king surveying his kingdom. "Damien," she said, but he didn't turn. "I hope you remember this moment," Elena said calmly. "I hope you remember how powerful you felt." The doors closed. 42 seconds later, she stepped into the lobby. Rain hit her the moment she exited the building. She had no umbrella. She dragged her suitcase down Michigan Avenue, the wheels catching on every crack in the pavement. She had $47 left. Her bank account was frozen. Damien still had access. She walked 3 blocks until she found shelter under the awning of a closed cafe and found comfort against the brick wall. No one noticed her. To the city, she was just another woman caught in the rain. Another quiet tragedy. But Elena didn't cry. She reached inside the side of her suitcase and tore open a seam she had sewn years ago. Then, her fingers touched a cold plastic, a burner phone, and a small black notebook with a single number written on the first page. She had sworn she would never make this call. She left that world behind 10 years ago. She wanted a normal life, a quiet one, far away from the power, the violence, and the shadow of her brother's name. She wanted to be loved as Elena, not as a Vitali. She turned on the old phone. The battery was almost dead. The screen light turned on weakly. Her fingers were numb from the cold as she dialed the number. It rang once, then twice. "This is a restricted line," a deep voice answered sharply. "Identify yourself." Elena inhaled as the cold from the rain filled her lungs. "It's me, Kraven," she whispered. There was silence that it felt like the call had dropped. Then a chair scraped back in movement. "Elena?" The voice cracked urgently, losing its rigid control. "Elena, is that really you? Christo! We've been looking for you for 3 years. Where are you?" "I'm in Chicago," Elena said. Her voice finally broke as the adrenaline faded. "I was wrong, Kraven. You were right about everything." "Are you safe?" The voice hardened instantly, the tone of a man used to command. "No." Elena glanced at a homeless man watching her luggage from a distance, weighing his chances. "I'm on the street. He threw me out. I have nothing." "Who?" The word came out low and dangerous. "My husband, Damien Cross." "Damien Cross," Kraven repeated slowly. "The developer, the one with the cheap condos in River North." "Yes. Stay where you are. Send your location. Do not move. Do not hang up." "Kraven, I don't want to come back to the family," Elena said quickly. "I just need a lawyer. A very good one. Someone who can fight the prenup." "You don't need a lawyer, Elena. You need strategy. And you're getting it." "He says I signed a prenup. He says I get nothing." Kraven laughed. Dark, controlled, terrifying. "He thinks he's playing checkers. He has no idea. He just flipped the board on a grandmaster. Elena heard Kraven barking orders in Italian, the language of home, of authority. "I'll be there in 90 minutes, Kraven said, "and God help Damien Cross, because I won't let this slide away." The call ended. Elena sat on her suitcase in the rain, watching water rush along the street, washing away 3 years of her life as if they never mattered. Damien Cross wanted a trophy wife to polish his image. He thought he discarded a nobody, a bookstore clerk with no family and no power. He was wrong. He had just gone to war with the sole heir of the Vitali Empire, and her brother, the most feared man on the East Coast, was already in the air. The rain had turned heavy when headlights cut through the darkness. Not one car. 3 black Cadillac Escalades moved in tight formation, forcing traffic aside. They stopped in front of the cafe, tires screeching on the wet pavement. The lead door opened before the car fully stopped. A wild man stepped out. He walked, even as rain soaked his expensive suit. He moved with calm and calculated precision, the kind learned in dangerous places. Kraven Vitali was tall and broad, his hair slicked back, wearing a suit that likely cost more than the cafe made in a year. He ignored the puddles ruining his shoes. "Elena," he said softly. "Kraven." The man once called the Builder King closed the distance in seconds. In that moment, he wasn't just Kraven. He was a brother ready to burn down a city. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like a shield. "I've got you," Kraven whispered, his voice shaking. "You're safe now." He pulled back, scanning her face. The weight loss, the exhaustion, the emptiness, and so his jaw clenched hard. "Did he hit you?" "No," Elena said. "He just broke me, piece by piece." Kraven turned to his security team, men who had followed him through worse storms. "Get her bags to the center vehicle. Call Dr. Ramos for a full medical check on her tonight. Book the entire penthouse floor at the Peninsula, and I want everything on Damien Cross by the time we arrive. Every single thing." "Yes, Mr. Vitali." Inside the SUV, Elena finally collapsed as it felt warm. She cried for the lies, for the baby she lost, for the man who blamed her for it, for the woman who thought she could escape her family's shadow and be loved for who she was. Kraven sat beside her, holding her hand. When the tears slowed, but she still felt the city lights blurred past the window. "I told you," Elena whispered. "I wanted a normal life." "And I respected that," Kraven said gently. "I stayed away. I let you live small. I even pulled the security back because you never liked the idea." He paused briefly. "But I never stopped watching. I knew about the mistress 2 months ago." Elena turned sharply. "You knew?" "I have a full file on Vanessa Moore," Kraven said. "I couldn't interfere. But when that phone activated, I knew it was over." He handed her a tablet, and a live financial dashboard filled the screen. "Damien just won the Navy Pier contract," Kraven said. $600 million. That's why he felt bold tonight. He said it was his legacy. "It's a noose," Kraven replied calmly. "He leveraged everything, loans, credit, mostly through Chicago Trust Bank." Elena frowned. "How do you know this?" Kraven tapped the screen. A completed acquisition flashed. "Because Vitali Holdings bought Chicago Trust Bank this afternoon." Her breath caught. "You bought his bank." "I bought his debt," Kraven said. "As of 6:45 tonight, I own him." The SUV pulled up to the Peninsula Hotel, glowing against the storm. A doorman rushed forward with an umbrella. Kraven helped Elena out, steadying her arm. "So," Kraven said casually, "we have 2 options. Option A, I destroy him by morning." Elena stood on the dry pavement, under the umbrella, protected from the rain for the first time in hours. She thought about Damien's laughter echoing through the penthouse. She thought about the way he checked his watch while destroying her life, like she was just an appointment running late. She thought about Vanessa moving into her home tomorrow, touching her things, sleeping in her bed. "No," Elena said, her voice hardening with every word. That's too easy. He needs to feel it. He needs to stand in a courtroom and think he's winning, so we can watch the hope die in his eyes when he realizes what he's done. Kraven smiled and looked genuinely pleased. Option B then, Kraven said. The slow burn. But then, let's get you a hot shower, have a real meal and some rest. Tomorrow we go shopping. If you're going to war, Elena, you need to look like a Vitali. 3 days later, Damien Cross stood in the center of his newly redecorated living room, held a champagne in his hand, watching the rain-washed Chicago skyline sparkle like diamonds. "Babe, do you think this gray sectional works with the accent wall?" Vanessa called from across the room. She was already changing things and erasing every trace of Elena. The vintage armchairs Elena loved were gone, replaced with sharp Italian furniture that looked expensive. "Whatever makes you happy, Vanessa," Damien said, kissing her forehead, his hand resting on her growing baby bump. "You're the lady of the house now." "I just don't want any of her bad energy hanging around," Vanessa said, pouting the way Damien liked. "Did she sign the papers yet?" "She will," Damien scoffed, completely confident. "She has no money, no family, nowhere to go. She's probably in a women's shelter. She'll sign just to get the $5,000 I generously offered." The intercom buzzed, cutting through his satisfaction. "Mr. Cross," the concierge said, "you've been served." Damien frowned. "Send it up." Minutes later, a process server handed him a thick stack of documents. Damien tore the envelope open, expecting signed divorce papers. Instead, bold black letters stared back at him. Notice of contested divorce and countersuit for fraud, emotional damages, and asset recovery. He scanned the pages, his brows furrowing deeply. "She's contesting? On what grounds? Fraud? Emotional distress?" Damien laughed and tossed the papers onto the glass coffee table. "She's delusional. Some cheap lawyer trying to scare me." He grabbed his phone and called Richard Stone. "Richard, my ex is trying to fight back." "I saw the filing," Richard replied calmly. "Cook County, Friday morning, emergency motion for spousal support." "Spousal support?" Damien snapped. "The prenup blocks that." "Exactly," Richard said. "We present the prenup. The judge throws it out in 10 minutes. 1 billable hour. It'll be entertaining." "You want to settle?" Richard asked, more out of habit than concern. "No," Damien said sharply. "I want to crush her, and I want this public." "Friday at 9, Richard said. "Wear the navy suit." The courtroom was ready and calm with regard to the court hearing. Damien sat at the table in his Tom Ford suit, confident. Vanessa sat behind him in a white maternity dress, playing her role perfectly. Richard scrolled through emails on his gold iPad. "Relax," Richard said. "Routine case." At 8:55, the courtroom doors opened. Damien turned, expecting Elena in her old cardigan, looking small and scared. Then she walked in. It was Elena, but not the Elena he knew. She wore a cream power suit, perfectly tailored. Her hair was styled in glossy waves. Oversized sunglasses hid her eyes until she removed them slowly, revealing a calm, focused stare. But Vanessa noticed the shoes first. Red bottom heels, the exact pair she had begged Damien for. "Who paid for that?" Damien whispered. "She had nothing." "Debt," Richard said dismissively. "We'll use it." Elena walked to the plaintiff's table and sat down alone, placing a thin folder in front of her. She didn't look at Damien. She didn't look at Vanessa either. "Where's her lawyer?" Damien sneered. "She's representing herself," Richard chuckled. "Judge Morrison hates that." "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Patricia Morrison took the bench, sharp-eyed and unsmiling. "Case 7428, Cross versus Cross. Both parties present?" Richard stood. "Richard Stone for respondent Damien Cross. Motion to dismiss based on a valid prenup." "And the plaintiff?" Judge Morrison asked. "Mrs. Cross, are you representing yourself?" Elena stood. "No, Your Honor. My counsel is arriving now. He was delayed by security." "Court starts at 9, Judge Morrison said. "If your attorney is not—" The courtroom doors burst open. 5 men entered in, perfect formation, wearing fitted black suits. They moved with precision, carrying heavy briefcases. At their center was a man who silenced the room without trying. Tall, broad, silver at his temples. His suit made everyone else look underdressed. Damien's stomach dropped. He knew that face. Everyone did. Kraven Vitali. The man walked past Damien as if he didn't exist. Kraven stopped beside Elena and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Kraven Vitali," he said calmly. "Counsel for the plaintiff, Elena Vitali." The courtroom gasped. "Vitali?" Damien whispered, turning to Richard. Richard wasn't moving. His face had gone pale. "Your Honor," Richard stammered, standing. "I wasn't aware Mr. Vitali was licensed in Illinois." "I'm licensed in New York, Massachusetts, and Illinois," Kraven said calmly, not even looking at Richard. He pulled a document from his briefcase and handed it to the bailiff. "My credentials, Your Honor, and my notice of appearance filed, electronically at 7 this morning." Kraven turned slowly to face Damien. His eyes were cold, flat, and deeply unsettling. "And for the record," Kraven added, his voice taking over the courtroom, "the plaintiff's legal name is Elena Maria Vitali. She reverted to her maiden name yesterday. I believe the respondent knows that name." Kraven paused, a sharp smile appearing. Or perhaps he never bothered to ask who his wife really was. Damien slumped back in his chair as if the strength had drained out of him. He looked at Elena, really looked at her for the first time, and saw it. The same sharp cheekbones, the same dark and focused eyes, the same presence that didn't need to demand attention to command it. He hadn't married a nobody. He had married the heir to an empire that made his ambitions look childish. And he had just thrown her out with nothing. "Ready to proceed, Your Honor," Kraven said calmly, as if he hadn't just detonated the courtroom. Moitié. Silence was complete. "Mr. Stone," Judge Morrison said, impatience evident in her voice, "are you prepared to present your motion to dismiss?" Richard swallowed, loosening his tie. "Yes, Your Honor. The prenuptial agreement signed by Ms. Vitali clearly waives all claims to marital assets. It is a standard, legally binding document." Damien leaned toward him, whispering urgently, "Why do you look scared? It's just a name. She's still broke. The contract holds." Kraven remained standing at the podium, relaxed, watching Damien like wounded prey. "Your Honor," Kraven said smoothly, "Mr. Stone calls the prenup standard, but it is nothing like that. It is a one-sided agreement designed to exploit a spouse with far less perceived power." Damien smirked. "However," Kraven continued, "we are not here to argue fairness. We are here to enforce it." Damien's smirk faltered. "Enforce it?" Kraven opened his portfolio. Article 9, Section B states, "The event of divorce, both parties retain sole ownership of assets acquired prior to marriage, including inheritance or trust funds received during the marriage." "Is that correct, Mr. Stone?" "Yes," Richard replied cautiously. "That protects Mr. Cross's assets." "Does it?" Kraven said mildly. "Because it also protects Ms. Vitali's. And since my client is the sole beneficiary of the Vitali family trust, established when she turned 18, her personal assets at the time of signing totaled approximately—" Kraven glanced at his notes. $380 million. The courtroom erupted. Reporters began typing furiously. Vanessa's face drained up instantly. Damien felt the room rotating right before him. "That's a lie," Damien shouted, half rising. "She worked in a bookstore. She took the bus." "She lived modestly," Kraven replied without looking at him. "Some people don't need to announce their wealth. Unlike those who lease cars they can't afford." Uneasy laughter rippled through the space. "Now here is the critical issue, Your Honor," Kraven continued. "The prenup includes a full financial disclosure clause. Both parties swore they disclosed all assets and debts. If one party concealed material information, the agreement becomes voidable." "I disclosed everything," Damien shouted. "This is insane." "Sit down, Mr. Cross," Judge Morrison snapped. "Did you?" Kraven asked calmly. He nodded to an associate, who passed thick document packets to the bailiff. Mr. Cross claimed his company was solvent and that he personally owned the Apex Tower penthouse valued at $4.2 million. But these bank records tell a different story. Richard flipped through the pages, sweat already forming on his forehead. The penthouse was owned by a Cayman Islands shell company called Harbor Holdings, which was over $2 million in debt due to a failed hotel project in Atlanta, conveniently omitted from disclosure. "Objection," Richard said weakly. "Relevance." "The relevance," Kraven said firmly, "is fraud. Mr. Cross misrepresented his finances to secure my client's signature." Kraven leaned forward. "Because of that fraud, we could void the prenup entirely. But we won't. We are enforcing the penalty clause." "What penalty clause?" Damien hissed. "Article 12, Kraven said. "If hidden debts exceed $100,000, the offending party forfeits 50% of marital asset appreciation." Kraven paused. "Cross Development has appreciated significantly due to the Navy Pier contract, $600 million. A contract secured with substantial contributions from my client." "She's a bookstore clerk," Damien shouted. "She knows nothing about construction." Elena stood slowly. She met his eyes. "Who corrected the North Tower foundation calculations, Damien?" she asked, quietly. "Who redesigned the western facade after the council rejected your plans?" Damien couldn't answer. "You were drunk that night," Elena continued evenly. "You passed out. I spent 6 hours fixing errors that would have caused structural failure. You woke up and took credit." The courtroom inhaled in sync. "We have the metadata," Kraven said, raising documents. "File timestamps, drafts, emails, all linking the work to Ms. Vitali." Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence, her expression hardening this time. "We request an immediate asset freeze pending forensic audit," Kraven said, "and damages equal to 50% of appreciated value." Judge Morrison looked at Damien. Then Elena. "Motion to dismiss denied," she ruled. "Asset freeze granted. Full financial access by 5 p.m. today." "5 p.m.?" Richard squeaked. "Then move quickly," Judge Morrison said. Court adjourned. Outside, chaos erupted. Cameras flashed as journalists were doing their job. "Elena, are you the Vitali heir?" "Mr. Cross, did you know?" "Mr. Vitali, are you taking over Chicago real estate?" Kraven's security team moved like a trained unit, forming a protective corridor. Elena walked through calmly, her head held high and her hand resting unconsciously on her barely visible baby bump. She had just discovered that she was pregnant for Damien even before she left his house, but there was no need of letting him know. She knew she will give her child the best life she deserves when she gives birth. Damien, by contrast, was almost unnoticed. He shoved past microphones and cameras, his perfect hair now messy, his expensive suit suddenly looking cheap under the harsh lights. Vanessa followed behind him, looking like she might be sick. "Damien, what does this mean?" Vanessa hissed as they rushed toward his Mercedes in the parking garage. "Does she actually get half your company?" "Shut up, Vanessa." Damien slammed the steering wheel so hard that the horn blared. "She gets nothing. It's all threats and legal theatrics. I'm the architect. I'm the talent. They can't touch me." But his hands were shaking so badly he couldn't get the key fob to work. He finally started the car and drove like a madman back to the Cross Development offices on Wacker Drive. He needed to shred documents. He needed to delete emails about the Atlanta failure. He needed to move money from offshore accounts before the asset freeze fully kicked in. He burst through the glass doors into the company lobby, expecting the usual noise. Assistants greeting him, interns rushing right behind him. Instead, the lobby was silent. 4 people were standing on the floor in dark windbreakers with Forensic Audit Division printed across the backs. They were boxing files, photographing computers, tagging everything. "What the hell is this?" Damien shouted, storming past the frozen receptionist. "Who are you people?" A woman with short gray hair and steel-rimmed glasses stepped forward, holding up a badge. "Mr. Cross, I'm Agent Linda Hayes with the Court-Appointed Receivership Division. We're securing assets under Judge Morrison's order. Receiver, I own this building. This is private property. Not anymore, sir, Agent Hayes said evenly. Chicago Trust Bank has called your commercial mortgage and revolving credit line. The asset freeze issued an hour ago qualifies as a material adverse change. The bank is exercising immediate repayment rights. The floor seemed to drop out from under Damien. Chicago Trust Bank? Kraven's bank. With that, he knew that the trap had already closed. Mr. Cross, a familiar voice said. Damien turned to see Thomas Chen, his CFO of 5 years, stepping out of the executive suite with a cardboard box of personal items. Thomas looked pale and wouldn't meet his eyes. Thomas, tell them. Tell them we have reserves. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. We don't have reserves, Damien, Thomas said quietly. You spent them on the penthouse renovations and the ring for Miss Moore. I warned you 3 months ago, but you told me to stay in my lane. Vanessa glanced down at the massive diamond on her finger. It no longer looked romantic. It looked incriminating. I'm resigning, Thomas said softly. I can't be part of a fraud investigation. I have a family. You coward, Damien screamed. I made your career. You exploited people, Thomas replied, his voice steady now. All of us, and I'm not going down with you. He walked to the elevator, and that was it. Damien rushed toward his corner office, but 2 guards stepped in front of him. They weren't his guards. They wore Vitali Holdings badges. Access denied, Mr. Cross, the larger guard said. Office sealed pending audit. That's my office. My name is on the door. Not during the investigation, please. Leave, or we'll escort you. Damien backed away, chest heaving. Around him, his employees watched. There was no loyalty in their eyes. Only embarrassment and fear. He turned toward the elevator. Vanessa was there and had her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in urgent whispers. Vanessa, we need to go. Now. The lake house. She lowered the phone. Her expression had changed. The affection was gone. The lake house? She asked. The one you claimed you owned, or another shell company? It's complicated, but we're together. We're having a son. Vanessa looked at her stomach, then back at him in cold eyes. I need stability, Damien. You promised luxury, security, no complications. She gestured toward the agent's boxing files. This is a federal investigation. This is prison. The elevator opened with a ding at that moment. I'm going to my sister's in Evanston, Vanessa said, stepping inside. Don't contact me until you fix this. Only if you can. Vanessa, you're carrying my child. Her hand moved to her belly. I'm carrying a complication, she said flatly. And complications get removed. The doors closed. Damien stood alone in the lobby of the empire he built on lies, debt, and stolen credit. The reception phone rang. Then another, all media. He staggered outside into the afternoon sun. His phone buzzed. From Vitali Holdings Legal Department subject. Settlement offer, Mr. Cross. We are prepared to withdraw fraud charges and halt bankruptcy proceedings under the following non-negotiable terms. 1. Sign uncontested divorce papers immediately. Publicly acknowledge Elena Vitali's contributions to the Navy Pier Project 3. Transfer 51% controlling interest in Cross Development to Elena Vitali for the sum of $1. You have 1 hour to respond. Kraven Vitali, General Counsel Vitali Holdings. Damien stared at the screen. $1. He looked up, and it was as if the storm clouds were gathering right before his eyes. Damien sat alone in the conference room of what had once been his law firm. Richard Stone had withdrawn an hour earlier, citing conflicts and malpractice exposure the moment Vitali Holdings made its calls. The door opened. This time, it wasn't lawyers. It was Elena and Kraven. Elena walked to the head of the table. She placed one sheet of paper down, then a pen, then something else, a crisp $1 bill. Damien looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. His suit rumpled. His platinum watch felt like the tick from it was going backward. He looked 10 years older. Elena, he rasped. Please, we can fix this. You loved me once. I'll change. I swear. Elena looked at him. There was no anger, no hatred, only pity. And that hurt more than anything else ever could. I love the man I thought you were, Damien, Elena said softly. I love the man who said he wanted to build things that lasted, things that mattered. But you don't build, you take credit. You exploit opportunities. You grab whatever you think you deserve. I was under pressure, Damien pleaded, half rising from his chair, his voice desperate. The market was brutal. I needed the Navy Pier contract to save the company. I did it for us, for our future. Don't, Kraven cut in, his voice sharp. He stood by the door, unmoving. Don't insult her intelligence by rewriting history. You did it for your ego. You did it so you could buy a bigger boat and replace your wife with someone younger. You did it because you're selfish. Damien sank back into the chair. If I sign this, I have nothing, he whispered. My reputation is destroyed. I'll never work in this city again. Your reputation is already destroyed, Elena said, her voice final and non-negotiable. Social media is trending cross-fraud. The American Institute of Architects suspended your license this morning. The Chicago Tribune runs its expose tomorrow. It ended. The moment you decided I was disposable. She tapped the document once. This is mercy. You sign, and Kraven ends the forensic investigation. You avoid criminal charges. You walk away broke, but free to start over somewhere else under a different name, if you're smart. What about Vanessa? Damien asked weakly. The baby? Vanessa contacted my office 40 minutes ago, Kraven said, checking his watch. She's negotiating immunity in exchange for testimony about your offshore accounts and tax evasion. She also booked an appointment at a women's health clinic for Monday. She's not having your baby, Damien. She's cutting off every tie she once had with you. The silence was crushing. Damien Cross reached for the pen with a trembling hand. The Mont Blanc felt impossibly heavy. He signed. The signature shook across the page. He slid the paper toward Elena. Elena picked up the $1 bill. It was old and worn, passed through countless hands. Take it, Elena said, pushing it toward him. Damien stared at the bill. Take it, she said again. He picked it up. His fingers trembled. Leave, Kraven said. Damien stood on unsteady legs. He walked to the door, every step slow and heavy. He stopped, hand on the handle, and looked back at Elena. What are you going to do with my company? He asked hollowly. You don't know how to run a development firm. Elena smiled. A real smile. I'm not going to run it, she said. I'm going to take it apart piece by piece. Then I'll build something real, something that serves people instead of one man's ego. Damien walked out and the doors closed. And Damien Cross faded into the thin air just like that. 6 months later, an alarm buzzed at 5:30 in the morning, rattling against cheap laminate. Damien Vance rolled off a mattress on the floor, his back stiff with pain. No bed frame, just a box spring in a small studio apartment in Cicero. The room smelled of damp air leaking through thin windows. Damien hadn't shaved in days. Salon cost money, and on a laborer's wage, every dollar mattered. He dressed in the dark, Carhartt pants coated in drywall dust, a frayed flannel, steel-toed boots that hurt his feet, no Italian suits, no Patek Philippe, just a $40 Timex. He drank coffee over the sink, staring at himself in a rust-spotted mirror. The arrogance was gone. Only exhaustion remained. It was Tuesday. Not just any Tuesday. Damien took 2 buses into the city, sitting in the back, eyes down. He used to ride in the back of a black car, irritated by traffic. Now he was the traffic. He got off at Roosevelt and walked 6 blocks. He knew he shouldn't be here, but he couldn't stay away. The construction site that ruined him was finished. 6 months ago, it was supposed to be Cross Tower, his monument. He had traded everything to build it. Now he saw what it had become. The building was lower and warmer. The sharp angles were gone. Steel and glass replaced with wood and green walls that felt alive. A banner hung right there. Grand opening. The Elena Vitali Community Center Public Library, legal aid, after-school programs. She had kept his name, not out of respect, as a reminder. She had taken his legacy and rewritten it. A crowd gathered. Not donors or politicians, real people, students, families, elderly couples. The excitement was real. Then he saw her. Elena stepped into the plaza, and Damien stopped breathing for a second. She looked free. Not just wealthy, but unburdened. The tension he remembered was gone. Her hair moved in the wind as she laughed. A man stood beside her, tall, kind-faced, but not powerful in the way Kraven was. He rested a hand on her back. Damien's chest tightened. Elena bump was showing now. 6 months pregnant, maybe more. Damien gripped a street lamp. Vanessa had terminated her pregnancy a week after the scandal. She left for Los Angeles to find someone untarnished. But Elena was building something. "Ladies and gentlemen," the mayor said over the speakers, "welcome to a new chapter for our Southside community." Damien watched like a ghost as the mayor praised a woman who understood that architecture isn't about ego. It's about people. Then Elena took the microphone. "Thank you," she said, her voice strong. "A year ago, I was told I didn't belong in this city's future. I was told worth is measured by what you take from others." She paused, and for one terrifying second, Damien thought her eyes swept across the crowd and landed on him. He shrank back behind the lamppost. "But I learned that real worth is measured by what you give," Elena continued. "This building stands on the ruins of greed and ego. We tore down what was hollow and built something with foundation and purpose. This library exists for the student who needs a quiet place to dream bigger. This legal clinic exists for the person trapped in a hard situation who needs help finding a way out. This community center exists for all of us." The applause was deafening, real and heartfelt. Damien felt a tear slide down his weathered cheek. It was cold and bitter. He wiped it away angrily. He had built skyscrapers. He had won awards. His name had appeared in magazines. But no one had ever looked at him the way this crowd looked at Elena. With gratitude, with respect, with love. "She's incredible, isn't she?" A woman standing beside Damien said, smiling at the stage while juggling grocery bags. "I used to know her," Damien muttered, his voice rough. "You're lucky," the woman said. "She saved this neighborhood. That developer who tried to put luxury condos here and tear down the community garden, Vance or Cross or whatever his name was. I heard he's in jail now. Good riddance to greedy people like that." Damien pulled his collar higher. "Yeah, good riddance." On stage, the ribbon cutting began. Kraven Vitali stepped forward, as commanding as ever. But his eyes softened when he looked at his sister. He handed Elena the oversized ceremonial scissors. Elena cut the ribbon. A jazz band struck up a celebration tune. Confetti made from recycled paper drifted down in bright colors. Damien turned away. He couldn't watch the joy anymore. It was too bright, and he had lived in darkness too long. He walked down the street, his work boots heavy on cracked pavement. He passed a high-end furniture store, the kind he used to browse with Vanessa, choosing stuffs that cost more than cars. He caught his reflection in the window. A tired, middle-aged construction worker with nothing to his name but a bad back and a story no one would believe. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Inside was the $1 bill Elena had given him 6 months earlier. Transfer of ownership. Consideration, $1. It wasn't just the price of his company. It was the value she placed on his threats, his bullying, his arrogance. $1 was what he was worth once the mask came off. "Spare change?" A homeless veteran sat on a milk crate near the corner, shaking a paper cup with a few coins inside. Damien looked at the man, then at the dollar in his hand. It was his last dollar until Friday. He needed it for lunch. maybe a sandwich from the bodega, but the weight of it felt unbearable. "Here," Damien said, dropping the dollar into the cup. "Bless you, brother," the veteran said, gratitude clear on his worn face. "Don't thank me," Damien said quietly. "It's cursed money anyway." He walked toward the bus stop, blending into the flow of the city, another face in the crowd, forgotten and unseen. Back on the plaza, the celebration continued. People streamed into the warm, bright building. Children ran toward the library, their excited voices echoing off walls built with purpose instead of profit. Kraven walked up to Elena and handed her a bottle of water. "You okay?" he asked quietly, scanning the area out of habit. "Security said they spotted someone matching his description near the Roosevelt bus stop." Elena took a sip and looked toward where Damien had been standing. The corner was empty now. "I know," she said. "I felt him watching. Do you want me to have him removed? I can file a restraining order immediately if you want." Elena shook her head, a small smile touching her lips. She turned to the employees, James, who was showing children the interactive map in the kids section, his excitement genuine. "No, Kraven," Elena said softly and turned back to face his brother. "Let him watch. Let him see what power looks like when it's used to build instead of destroy." She rested a hand on her brother's arm. "Besides," she added, "he's already in a prison of his own making. The walls are guilt and regret. There's no parole for that sentence." Kraven studied her face and saw the peace there. "You're better than him," Kraven said. "You always were anyway." "I wasn't better," Elena said gently. "I was just finally free to be myself." "Well," Kraven said with a rare smile, "this former villain is hungry, and since you're Philanthropist of the Year, you're buying lunch." Elena laughed, light and unburdened, carried by the autumn air. "Deal, but we're getting tacos on Halstead. I'm craving al pastor." Kraven raised an eyebrow. "I was thinking a linea." "It's a democracy now, big brother," Elena said, looping her arm through his. "Tacos win." They walked down the steps together, the brother who brought the thunder and the sister who survived the storm, leaving behind the shattered remains of a glass empire to build something that would last. Elena's journey from silenced wife to architect of her own justice proves that silence is never weakness. It's strategy. Damien Cross thought power came from volume and expensive watches. He failed to see that real power waits, plans, and strikes when the moment is right. In the end, Damien's empire collapsed because it lacked integrity. He lost not only because Elena had a powerful brother, though that helped, but because he underestimated the character of the woman he married. He chased appearances and lost his soul. Elena didn't just take his company. She took his story and rewrote it. She turned a monument to greed into a place of service, proving the best revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. She walked away with everything, not because she was a Vitali, but because she finally stopped hiding and became herself. After a few months, she gave birth to a baby girl, which she had maintained her surname, Vitali, instead of Cross. She felt that Damien doesn't need to be a part of her child's life because he didn't deserve it in the first place. If you felt the power shift when Kraven walked into that courtroom, or if that $1 bill hit you, right in the chest, tap the like button now. It tells YouTube this story deserves to be shared. Now, I'm curious, what would you have done if you were Elena? Would you have taken the company or pushed for prison? Drop your verdict in the comments. I read every single one. And if stories about betrayal, justice, and quiet revenge speak to you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Because the truth always surfaces, and karma never forgets. Until the next story, stay strong, stay hopeful, stay inspired.